On 5 News, a controversial nuclear power station gets the green light. The Prime Minister rubber stamps the Hinkley Point deal with significant new safeguards. But there are still major concerns over security and value for money. Also, more BBC stars' salaries to be made public as part of its new Royal Charter. Sir Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome say they have nothing to hide after their medical records are hacked. Do you text and drive? Plans for a crackdown as more and more motorists break the law. And our golden heroes, Paralympics GB, rewrite the record books with more than 100 medals in total. Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Sian Williams. It's controversial, it's costly, and it's already caused concern for the Prime Minister. Today, the Hinkley Point nuclear power plant, designed to power millions of homes for 6 decades, has been given the go-ahead. Theresa May had delayed the deal 2 months ago over concerns about French and Chinese investment. The government says it's now confident national security won't be put at risk. But as our political editor Andy Bell explains, critics argue it's still a bad deal for customers.
It'll be the first nuclear power station in this country for a generation, supplying 7% of Britain's electricity. Hinkley C was all set until Theresa May froze it in her first week in power. But now it's back on again.
It was right that the new government should have taken the time to consider all components of the project. And now, having reviewed the project, the government is satisfied that the improved deal and the other changes announced today will, for the first time, remedy the weaknesses of the previous regime for foreign ownership of critical infrastructure.
What that means is that EDF, the French-owned company building Hinkley C, has agreed not to sell its stake there unless the government agrees. And the same rule will apply to future nuclear power stations. Security is an issue because China is putting up a third of the £18 billion needed. The opposition say what the government's announced today is just for show.
They risked a diplomatic dispute with one of our key future trading partners, and in the end, all they've done is pretend to give themselves powers which they already possessed. This statement is window dressing. It is face-saving by a government that talked big and eventually backed down with a whimper.
And there's been no change to the price guaranteed by the government for the electricity generated at Hinkley, which is over the current market rate. Greenpeace, who delivered a petition to Downing Street today, say that means consumers will in effect subsidise this project by about £30 billion at least.
EDF have failed to build this exact type of reactor 3 times already, in France, in Finland and in China. And in Finland, the reactor is 10 years overdue and 3 times over budget. So this is the price that consumers are being asked to put up now, but I don't think that's the end of it. I think the costs are going to keep going up and up.
The Chinese are hoping Hinkley C will open the way to building more nuclear power stations in the UK. And along with EDF, they've welcomed today's announcement. But privately, they may just be wondering why Theresa May made them wait.
And Andy, I suppose the question is, was this deal worth the wait?
Well, let's look at what's changed and what hasn't changed. What hasn't changed is that guaranteed strike price for electricity. People thought that might be one of the things under discussion. That remains exactly the same. And as for this issue about ownership, well, the case has been made pretty forcefully in the House of Commons today that the government already had any powers it needed to deal with what's called, worries over ownership of critical infrastructure. So I think what's happened here is that, if you remember, Theresa May came in July faster than people were expecting, and the deal for Hinkley was due to go through within days. And I think her team said, well, this is a big, important, expensive deal. Let's just hold it for a second and have a look at it. But when they went to have a look at all that was involved in this deal, I think the consequences of pulling out of it or changing it so substantially that it might collapse of its own accord, I think they looked at that, saw it was extremely difficult to do, and have decided now to go through with it with some changes, frankly, just around the edges.
Andy, thank you. Stars of some of the BBC's most popular shows are to have their pay packets revealed. As part of the corporation's new Royal Charter, it'll have to name every presenter who's on more than £150,000 a year, which could include the likes of Claudia Winkleman and Graham Norton. Ministers say it'll help ensure the licence fee is good value for money. Here's Simon Vigar.
It's quite driving a rocket.
They are some of the biggest names in television.
New managers, new signings, but apart from that, nothing much has really changed.
What is about to change is what we know about how much licence fee money they are paid.
Just a question.
Proposals for the BBC's new Royal Charter include a clause identifying anyone earning more than £150,000. That's a much lower threshold than before, when people weren't named. In Parliament today, there was this observation from the SNP's media spokesman, who used to be a presenter on BBC Breakfast.
If your agent is worth his salt, Mr. Speaker, sir, or her salt, they will know exactly how much you and all your competition are paid. I know this from bitter experience.
But the BBC worries it will act as a poacher's charter. In a statement, the Director General Lord Hall said the BBC operates in a competitive market and this will not make it easier for the BBC to retain the talent the public love. A battle the BBC has won is over independence of the new board. The majority of members will now not be government appointments. And on the money, well, there is a loophole.
If it's a co-production or it's an independent production, in other words, these people are not paid by the BBC. Think, for example, of all the presenters of Great British Bake Off, none of whom are paid by the BBC, but rather by Love Productions. There's no guarantee that that information will emerge in public. So you could easily end up with a two-tier BBC, the in-house bit where it's all disclosed, and the independent stroke co-production bit where it isn't.
Yes, the Great British Bake Off controversy is a reminder that the show is the thing. But behind the scenes, show business is a business. Simon Viger, 5 News.
2 people reported to be a mother of 9 and her nephew have been shot dead in North London. The victims have been named locally as Annie and Burville Akofo. They were killed at a house in East Finchley this morning. No one has yet been arrested. Burville's sister described him as a good guy.
He didn't deserve to die the way that he did. He did not. He was such a good person. He didn't deserve to die like that.
No trouble, nothing.
He didn't. He really didn't. Obviously, everybody has their faults. Everyone has maybe even a temper or something bad to say about someone, but he was such a good guy.
And the mother and grandmother of 6-month-old Molly May Wotherspoon, who was mauled to death by a pet dog, have been jailed. Claire Riley and Susan Alcott admitted dangerous dogs charges over the attack by the American Pit Bull in Northamptonshire in October 2014. The medical records of some of Team GB's Olympic athletes have been leaked. Hackers stole files belonging to Sir Bradley Wiggins, Chris Froome and 3 others. There's no suggestion any of the athletes has broken the rules. Let's talk to Julian Druger, who's with me. Now, the files were stolen from the World Anti-Doping Agency. What actual details were leaked out?
Well, these are confidential details about some of our top sporting stars. 25 athletes, 5 from Great Britain. The data was on the website of the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA. Now, the breach was made apparently by Russian hackers. No suggestion, as you said, of any wrongdoing by any of the athletes. Sir Bradley Wiggins' data was on there, though. He's been breached. The data relates to the use of TUEs, therapeutic use exemptions. This is when athletes are allowed to use otherwise banned substances because of a verified medical need. Sir Bradley uses one because he has asthma. Chris Froome, that other prolific cyclist, uses a steroid for chest complaints. Now, both men have previously spoken about their illnesses, their ailments and the medicines they take. One expert today has been telling us more about TUEs.
Indeed, many of those substances on the banned list are used genuinely for medical treatment purposes, but it will only be taken in very small dosages and for a very short period of time that relates to the length of time that an athlete has an injury or a problem for. So it's not a license to take that substance forever.
Now, what do we know about the hackers themselves?
Well, they're known as the Fancy Bears Group. They're Russian. There is a whiff of revenge about all of this. WADA says Russia is retaliating after its report into the country's state-sponsored cheating earlier this year. On their website, the hackers have called WADA corrupt. They say they've done this as TUEs are what they call licenses for doping. The Kremlin has denied any involvement in this, but hugely embarrassing for WADA that they've been breached like this. The athletes say that this information was already out there, but members of Team GB have been warned that they too could be breached next.
Julian, thank you. Still to come on the programme. The high price of caring for the elderly. A report reveals a worrying and growing gap in support. And the celebrations keep on coming after an astounding 24 hours at the Paralympics. All that and more after the break. Hello and welcome back. You're watching 5 News. It's the biggest road safety concern for motorists today, according to the RAC. The sight of other drivers brazenly using their handheld mobile phones. It's illegal, but almost a third of those the organisation spoke to admitted doing it, with some even saying they had texted or taken pictures while at the wheel. Here's Peter Lane.
Calling, texting, using apps and social media, more temptation to pick up the phone than ever, more drivers admitting that they do. Daryl Martin knows the cost. His brother Lee was out cycling when he was killed by a driver texting at the wheel. This is the last photo Daryl took of Lee just a few weeks earlier.
My brother's not going to come back, but I don't want someone else to be in my position. Or my sister-in-law's position, or my niece's position, you know, my mum's position, my dad's position, or my brother, or my kids, you know. It's horrendous. Someone's just gone from my life, just like that.
The man who killed Lee, Christopher Gard, was jailed but had been caught using his phone at the wheel 8 times before and never lost his licence. Lee's family want the law toughened up.
And at each stage he could have been prevented if there had been harsher penalties at that point. If it had been 6 points, 9 points, or a ban even for using your phone, then he would have stopped. I would be talking to you, my brother would be alive.
Almost a third of drivers, 31%, admit using a handheld phone. A sharp rise from 8% in 2014. 19% of drivers confessed to sending a message or posting on social media, and 14% even owned up to taking photos or videos. The government's due to unveil a crackdown soon, with the minimum fine expected to rise from £100 to £150, and penalty points set to increase from 3 to 4. Is that a strong enough deterrent? What can change driver behaviour?
There is a significant problem with people simply thinking that they can do it and get away with it. So enforcement is a problem, but also a high-profile awareness campaign, a public campaign by the government, by authorities, to advertise just how dangerous it can be, and that can raise awareness and can help stop the problem.
It's a cultural change that needs to happen, not just a purely legal one. You never get over it. There's the hole in our life, in our family life, his lack of being is haunting, you know.
The families hope that stories like Lee's will make drivers think. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Now, we all like to think that if we're elderly and need care, we won't have to raid our savings or rely too much on those around us. There's a worrying new survey, though, which has revealed how more and more people are having to do just that because councils are slashing social care funding. The report says many care homes are on the brink of going bust, which could force the vulnerable to fend for themselves. Olivia Kinsley reports.
Hi, Dad. Here you go. I've got your glass of water.
As a young man, Ashley was vibrant, chatty and loved to cook, but dementia has taken that away. Now his daughter Jacqueline cares for him at home. She also has a full-time job and a daughter of her own. Some days she finds it hard to cope.
It's just so difficult. I'm waiting for a stair lift for Dad at the moment because he cannot manage the stairs any longer, and I'm afraid that he's going to fall. I can't assist him because otherwise, if he falls and I'm with him, I'm going to hurt myself. Then I'm not able to look after him.
Those with no close family and no money are even more vulnerable, relying on a system that today's report warns is spiralling into crisis because it's underfunded.
What today's report starkly shows is that the government funding from local authorities for people who have urgent healthcare needs and social care needs is going down. So people who need support to live in their own home with dementia or to be in a nursing home or a care home are less likely to get the support they need than was the case 5 years ago. And yet the number of people needing that support is going up.
Fees for a place in an independent care home can rise to tens of thousands of pounds a year. Those working in the care sector say many younger people are unaware of the huge costs they'll face in later life.
They've lived with the NHS services all their life, and they don't realise that social care isn't funded in the same way, and most people don't have very generous pension schemes anymore, if they ever did. So of course it doesn't add up.
The government's promised an extra £1.5 billion for social care by 2019. Meanwhile, full-time carers like Jacqueline will continue to fill the gap. In other homes across the country, those with no family and not much money face the uncertain and lonely prospect of growing old with little support. Olivia Kinsley, 5 News.
The US Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is said to be in excellent physical health. That's according to a doctor's letter made public by his campaign. The 70-year-old is classed as overweight and he takes statins and a low dose of aspirin. It says he doesn't use tobacco products or drink alcohol. His rival Hillary Clinton is set to return to campaigning shortly after she fell sick with pneumonia. A number of British tourists have been caught up in an explosion on a boat on the Indonesian island of Bali. Reports say 2 people, including 1 German, were killed while 14 other people were injured. The explosion is believed to have been caused by a faulty fuel tank. And John Lewis has announced a fall in profits. In the last 6 months, it made just under £82 million. That's a drop of 15%. Its bosses say it's because of higher staff pay and a more competitive market. The athletes say there is a brilliant buzz around Britain's Paralympic camp right now, and you can really understand why. This afternoon in Rio has brought another glut of golds, taking them to their highest total for 28 years. And here is that ever more impressive medal table. Britain in second with an incredible 47 golds. The overall tally now surging past 100. Here's Minnie Stevenson on another spectacular day.
A winning streak for Paralympics GB with 9 gold medals on day 7. In fact, no other British team has done that well at a Paralympics since 1988. And one of those medals was cyclist Dame Sarah Storey, bringing home yet another gold.
Takes it!
And in the 100 metres breaststroke, Paralympics GB hogged all the medals, with Aaron Moores winning gold and Scott Quinn coming second with silver. Moores even showed Rio how to celebrate. And the smile on Hannah Cockcroft's face said it all when she won the 400 metres for athletics. In dressage, Sophie Wells' dream was to get gold, and she did just that.
Jeanette Chippington has the gold by the narrowest of margins.
As day 8 got underway, Jeanette Chippington made history, becoming our first ever para-canoeing champion.
Gold for Great Britain!
Then taking the medal tally up to 100, Anne Dickens in record time got gold.
But Emma Wiggs, well, she could have turned and celebrated so far back in that race.
And no one could stop 5-time world champion Emma Wiggs winning the 200 metres para-canoeing sprints.
Because she has a Paralympic gold medal.
In dressage, emotions were running high as Natasha Baker won her 3rd gold at a Paralympic Games. Euphoric scenes as Paralympics GB continues to break records and their opponents' hearts in Rio. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Prince Harry is celebrating his 32nd birthday today. The royal, who's 5th in line to the throne, is celebrating in the UK. He'd spent the summer in Africa, where he was helping with a project to save hundreds of elephants from poachers. And finally, motorists and pedestrians in southeast China have had to dodge a flyaway moon. Really? The large inflatable balloon came loose during a typhoon in the city of Fuzhou during a mid-autumn festival that celebrates the moon. Footage shows it rolling down the street over cars and towards people hurriedly moving out of the way. Authorities say no one was hurt. It looks pretty light, doesn't it? Before we go, Matt's joined us to tell us what's coming up on 5 News tonight. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Sean. Well, tonight we'll be hearing from 2 bereaved mothers who want our schools to do more to protect children from what they call life risks. They say their boys might still be alive if they've been taught more about things like sex, the internet, alcohol and drugs. We'll be talking to them about what exactly they want to achieve. And if you're looking for more inspirational athletics, have a look at this. we're going to be meeting Charles Euster. He is 97 and he's hoping to bag another medal at the British Athletics Championships at the weekend. Sprightly doesn't even begin to describe it. He is a world record holder thanks to this effort, Sean. That's all coming up at 6:30.
He's faster than both of us.
Well, yeah.
See you later. Sean Welby has the weather next. I'll see you again next week. Before that, Matt is back at 6:30. Thanks for watching tonight. Goodbye for now. Cheeky.